Hey, my name is Jamie Havlicek. Today I'm going to be talking about Erikson's stages of psychosocial development and kind of giving some examples of what each of the stages entails. So, the first stage of Erikson's psychosocial development stages is trust versus mistrust. So, this is the age range from birth to about 18 months old. And it's just the idea of, when a baby cries, does someone come and give him a bottle or pick him up and hold him? Does he learn to trust his parents or a caretaker versus is he being neglected and develop like a certain kind of mistrust? So the goal or the virtue for this stage is hope. And with success of this stage, or learning how to trust people, he develops hope versus hopelessness, where there may be prolonged times between feedings or maybe no care at all, and he's neglected. That would definitely lead to hopelessness. The second stage of Erikson's psychosocial development is autonomy versus shame. And this is in the age range of about 13 months to about 3 years old. This is where a child develops a sense of individual control over their body or certain skills that they might be learning, like how to get dressed. So if their mom or dad lets them just get dressed themselves, they say, I want to do it, and they get dressed themselves and they put on some kind of crazy outfit that doesn't match. Maybe their shoes are on backwards. It's okay. Like, does the parents encourage their autonomy, or are they shaming them into, oh, you didn't do that right, you didn't put your shoes on right, and they make them feel bad? So the virtue or the goal of this stage is independence. And do they learn to feel accomplished and learn to do those self-care skills, those activities of daily living? Or are they being shamed and they develop a sense of a lack of self-esteem, where they doubt their own abilities, or they may have to rely on others into some type of an unhealthy dependence. Next, we have initiative versus guilt. So this is the age range from about 3 years old to 5 years old. This reminds me of kids playing on the playground, like at recess time. They're taking the initiative to create imaginative games and role plays, and they're just having fun. And sometimes that gets a little crazy, so you need to set boundaries, but boundaries of right and wrong. But if children's imaginations are squashed and controlled or ridiculed or criticized, overly criticized, then they may develop a sense of guilt instead of initiative. So they would have reduced interactions with others, and they would develop a low sense of self-esteem. So the goal or virtue in this stage is purpose. And it's when kids really start to kind of develop their sense of purpose in life. Who do I want to be? What likes and dislikes do I have? What draws or attracts kids to certain skills or professions? If they develop the sense of guilt, they may end up with a just feeling of meaninglessness. Next, we have industry versus inferiority. This is the age from about 5 to 12 years old. This reminds me of sports. Kids are developing their physical skills. They're affected not just by grown-ups and parents and teachers, but now by their peers, as they seek other people's influence, and they can either be encouraged or discouraged. They can develop competency, actual competency, instead of just the kind of initiative to try to learn competency. So the goal or virtue for this stage is competency. And when they get discouraged or crushed, they may, even if they're kind of somewhat competent already, they may, or potential for competency, they develop this feeling of inferiority where they're just not good enough. And that kind of leads into the next stage, which is identity versus role confusion. And this is from ages 12 to 18 years old. And this is that adolescent transition from childhood into adulthood. It's a very strange time, and it's when kids are trying to figure out what their identity is. They start to see what careers are and what they do, and they may have an interest in a certain area. They can either be encouraged or discouraged by parents, and especially their peers. Their friends have a huge influence on them, and maybe even what their interests are. So the goal or virtue for this stage is fidelity. Fidelity means faithfulness or commitment to themselves and to others. And if they don't have success in this area in identifying who they are and what their interests are and be encouraged in a certain direction, they can develop a role confusion where they don't know who they are, they don't know what they're interested in. They feel like, I feel like I'm interested in this area, but I've been crushed by someone else's influence, and now I'm just confused. I don't know who I am and what I want to do, or who I want to be. And they have sort of an identity crisis. The next stage is from 18 years to about 40 years old. I fall into this range. I'm 38 years old. This is the intimacy versus isolation range. This is the 6th stage of Erikson's psychosocial development. So this is young adulthood. This is a pretty wide range, 18 to 40. That's 22 years right there. And this is when we're forming intimate, loving relationships, usually with the opposite sex. I don't want to get into that a whole lot, but this is the goal or virtue of a successful stage here in intimacy versus isolation is love. And I think a lot of people define love in the wrong ways, where love is a feeling to them. I want to feel loved. I want to feel like I love someone else. Whereas true, real love is more than just emotional or physical love. It's more than a self-gratifying love. It's a sacrificial love. It's where I put my spouse's needs over and above my own, and she does the same for me. And we just make one heck of a team that way, because when you're constantly putting the other one in front of you, I tell a lot of people that are building relationships is that it's not a 50-50 gig. Marriage and relationships, it's 100, and sometimes 110 if your wife is sick or something happens. It's not 50-50. This is all and over and above. It's a lot of work. And so the goal or virtue is love. Without success in this area, someone may develop feelings of loneliness, fears of commitment and isolation, and depression. So the next stage of Erikson's psychosocial development is called generativity versus stagnation. And this is the 40-year to 65-year range. And I'm almost into that range, so I'm almost worried about my generativity, but this is the middle adult range. Intimacy versus isolation is sort of the young adult range. This is the middle adult range. And it's when they may question themselves and say, am I a productive member of society, or my family, or my company, etc.? This is where a lot of times people have a midlife crisis. They're questioning their self-worth, their value. Are they stagnant, or are they productive? Like I said, a career, in their family, in society as a whole. So the goal and virtue with success in this stage is care. Am I cared for? Do I care about others? As opposed to being disconnected or uninvolved, and it may develop a sense of bitterness. Am I generating productivity, or am I stagnant? That leads us to the final and 8th stage, which is ego versus despair. And this is the 65 plus, the older adults, geriatric adults. This is 65 until the end of their life. A lot of reflectivity, a lot of reflection goes on during this stage. Contemplation. Am I accomplished? Have I led a good life? Do others see me as a valued person? They develop integrity and wisdom, which is the virtue and goal of this stage. Wisdom versus despair or regret. Should I have spent more time with my kids? Or I wish I'd been a fighter pilot instead of a nurse, something like that, or I wish I'd been, I wish I'd done this or that. Wisdom enables a person to look back on his or her life with sort of a sense of closure and completeness, and even accept the end of life or their death without fear. And I have to say that I know I don't fear death either, because I know that I was created by a God who created everything. And I know that he sent his son to die for this imperfect person. His perfect son, Jesus Christ, died for me because there was no other way that I could have life. That is a gift from God, and it's free. And I don't fear death because I don't want to be stupid. I'm not trying to tempt death either. But I don't fear death because I know that Christ died for me and that he has given me that new life. Thanks for listening to Erikson's Stages of Psychosocial Development. Talk to you later.